Massachusetts accent. I'm sorry.
There's
I didn't get that.
70 different cities showing the ads locally, and they're just, instead of just one ad that they're getting money from, they're getting 70 different smaller versions that probably adds up to more. And I think when you look at just where stuff's going with audio, and if we could potentially, by we, I just mean like the audio community, if there's a way to target somebody in Kansas City specifically, hey, there's a Chiefs game on Sunday. Tickets are $10 off. Go to this website. But then in like, Dallas, it's like, hey, Cowboys fans, come to the Cowboys team store. That's the upside of all.
Well, what's going to happen too, though, because it's streaming. It's not like it's not just a file that you're downloading when you listen on Spotify, right? A regular podcast player, you download a file, so the ads are set. You can dynamically insert an ad on download, which some folks have tried to do. But Spotify, because it's streaming, they can know it's Ben Thompson in Los Angeles listening, and they can put an ad just for me. So we could be listening to the same podcast.
And Ben likes cheeseburgers.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we could actually get different ads. And that's where they're really going to take it. And then they can actually give much more actionable data and feedback to advertisers that they know it's being listened to. They know who it's reaching, and how much they can charge will.
The only thing you said that I disagreed with is that podcasts lose their value almost immediately, because I actually don't think that's the case for some of them. And I know like with ours, like the rewatchables.
That's right.
So if you look at,
I used to listen to a bunch of the binge mode ones, the same thing.
So that's another one.
But that's to your point. There's going to be innovation in podcast types, right?
But
I was locked on like the conversation about like the news.
I'm with you. But I think one of the reasons that I wanted to do the Book of Basketball podcast, because I wanted to create a podcast that you could listen to 9 years from now. And I think with the stuff I'm doing on this feed, it's gonna, like me and Sal guessing the week 15 lines. That's over in 2 days.
The parrot corner will last forever.
I guess the parrot corner might last, but Book of Basketball, we saw it with rewatchables where we hit a point, probably September, October. If you look at the total listens for like a month, half of it was for the 4 new pods we put up. The other half was for the entire library. And for us, like I want to create more stuff that could potentially have a life.
And this is a huge opportunity for Spotify too, to start. You're walking down the street. I've already listened to my new podcasts. I want something else to listen to. And just like Netflix, they can algorithmically start surfacing stuff that they know I'm interested in, that I like, and I can binge on, like the new crime procedural podcast, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of people were putting down Spotify. Spotify's trying to make the case they're a Netflix comparison when they IPO'd. And my argument at the time was, they're not, because of this margin piece and the fact that music companies are much more powerful relative to Spotify than Spotify is, than Netflix is relative to the content producers. But in the case of podcasts, they absolutely can be like Netflix. And so there, the comparison makes much more sense. So it's like Spotify has like 2 different businesses that are both about listening, but the economics and value chains are totally different. And so what they're building now is actually in the long run, I think it'll be much more interesting, much more valuable than anything they would have ever been able to do in music.
There's another similarity too. They were a technology company that eventually started caring about content. And I think with Netflix, like ultimately the reason Netflix started winning was of the technology they had. And once they figured out how to combine the technology with their content decisions, it took off. And I think with Spotify, it's a really fascinating company that, unlike where Netflix was, I think 6, 7, not to make it sound like a Spotify infomercial, but they just have less people competing with them right now. That might change 2-3 years. But when Netflix was doing what they were doing, all these other big people saw it. They just got there earlier, planted their flag on it, and got basically how many year head start on Disney Plus? Like 5 years?
No,
6 years?
They started streaming like in 2011, I want to say.
Right.
Yeah, so a long head start. I mean, Disney was selling them content until 2015, 2016.
I've told this story before, but I remember Connor, the guy I created 30 for 30 with. 30 for 30 was done. We had finished the first series.
You told this story when I was on the podcast last time.
And he's like, we sold it again. And I was like, what? And now you think like was Netflix's genius.
Yep.
It's
absolutely.
like, well, here's some money. And people are like, cool, money.
And what that did was...
then they just built this war
because that was the model, right? Because you built stuff, you could sell it again and again. And that gave Netflix this sort of content runway to start building up their own stuff because they had, they could build up the streaming capability and the customer base and then start investing. And again, just their own content being this long process of buying stuff and then doing the whole thing and then now producing the whole thing. Yeah, it's brilliant. Netflix, if there's something like Google, it's impressive in a way. They were in the right place, right time, wrong place. They had clearly superior technology, but it was a disparate market. Someone was going to come in and just clean up that whole thing they did. What Netflix has done, the way they've sort of laddered up their business, come into a very profitable and strong entity and just basically disrupted the entire thing is super impressive. I think the most impressive sort of management story in tech, probably in a lot of ways. It's.
We never mentioned Amazon. Is Amazon lurking with all this before we go?
I think Amazon,
because Amazon just decided one day we're going to get into grocery delivery.
Right.
And yesterday my wife ordered Instacart and it was a bunch of Amazon bags that showed up and you think well, they weren't doing this a year ago. So I think we've all learned never to rule them out with anything. So
it goes in two directions. So right now, like I said, their value from content is it's a way for them to sell other subscriptions to other stuff. A reason why they wouldn't do it is Amazon is really at its core a logistics company, and they're building up this massive just capability where other people can sit on top and then they, to take a skim off of all that. A reason why Amazon would do it is because Amazon is very good at things that take a lot of money. They're they just spend and they will get a return from it. The reason why though I think they won't ultimately is because Netflix beat them to it. Right? Netflix already spent all the money, is already in the position. Amazon would love to be we'll have random crap for you to watch and we'll just be omnipresent. That's Netflix is what Amazon would want to be. Amazon wouldn't want to be a prestige TV provider. They'd want to be a default, always on the background sort of provider. But Netflix beat them to it. So I think they'll probably just sort of stay where they are.
And they probably compete with Apple with the stuff 21 Bridges is now available to rent.
That's right.
Come here or come to Apple.
That's right. Apple and Amazon, I think, are directly competing for that market to sell not just individual episodes, but also to sell subscriptions to other people's
keeping a library
services.
Of all your all your digital things.
That's right. That's right. And so you can search on Amazon for a show and it happens to be on HBO, and they'll sell you a subscription to HBO. If you already have HBO, then they'll start playing it. They'll own the interface layer.
Yeah,
and everyone else sort of plugs into it, but they won't make the level of investment and content that Disney or Netflix will.
Last thing, you get to regurgitate some of your old content here. So I'm sure at the end of the decade last year, you're making predictions for the 2020s, and I'm sure you've been thinking about it. Give us one prediction for the 2020s.
Well, I think the big thing is everyone in technology always assumes that what's the next wave, what's the next thing that's going to come along and be the big thing. And this is a bit contrarian and a bit risky because people will definitely throw this in my face if I'm wrong. I don't think there is a next big thing from a company perspective. We're going to have the ear stuff we talked about, right? And we'll have AR glasses. But I think the people that will win that is going to be Apple, and it's going to be Amazon and Microsoft. And the companies that are there, we have phones in our pockets and we have these cloud services that are available anywhere in the world. And what's the logical endpoint to that? We went from a mainframe in a room. It's been expanding. Unless we're going to have interstellar cloud services or, omnipresent computing in a way that's actually the thing with the phone is this screen is genuinely useful for basically anything you want to do.
Yeah.
Once you get smaller, there's some use cases where it's valuable, but there's by definition stuff you just literally you can't read on something once it that's in your ear, for example, or watch a TV show. So what's going to happen is they're all going to be adjuncts to the phone. So you'll have something in your ear and you'll have the phone there as with it. And so I think we will be with. I think it's going to be Apple and Amazon and the same big companies in 10 years are going to be the big companies. But so all the innovation, this stuff's going to happen on top of that. Everyone's going to assume, we assume everyone has a phone. We assume there's cloud services everywhere. Now what sort of stuff can we build given that assumption? Which is what Uber is, right? Uber's if everyone actually has a phone with them, then they can use that to call a cab and they can come pick me up. That assumes the presence of the phone. And so I think this idea of the phone's going to go away or be disrupted like the PC was disrupted or the mainframe. I actually don't think that's going to happen. I think this paradigm, broadly speaking, is going to be where we're at. And then we'll have lots of innovation on top of that.
I have one smaller prediction that ties into the thing you're about to plug. I think these companies are all going to make it a lot easier for self-creator kind of self-businesses, people who create their own content to just have subscriptions for them.
Absolutely.
So, probably Apple and Spotify and whoever else, where it's just like, here's my thing. In one click, now you're a subscriber, and I don't have to get fucked on the back end of people sharing the password, all that. It's tied specifically to your Apple ID or your Spotify, whatever you have. And that's it. And you're my customer, and one button, you're here.
That's super interesting. I don't know if that's going to, I do think it'll be much easier to be a creator going forward. Like, that doesn't mean it's going to be easier to succeed because there'll be more competition, but it'll be easier to
be easier to create and get money from people that like what you're creating.
That's right. Like, there's a startup called like Substack that is explicitly modeled on Stratechery. But then instead of me having to put all the pieces together and figure it out in 2013, they'll it's in a box. You just sign up and you have all the tools right there.
Boom,
right?
You're off.
That's right. So I think that will continue. We're going to see it happen with podcasts. There's been a bunch of new podcasts that are like for-pay podcasts. And you go and you click a button and it loads into your existing podcast player, just like email. It like uses the free standards. And so I think that will continue. Will Apple and Spotify enable that is a very interesting question, because on one hand, they would rather you just pay the bundle price. But on the other hand, is it like you have an add-on, so you usually pay $10 a month for Spotify, but then you could pay $15 a month if you want Spotify plus Stratechery. I don't know.
Or could they get a cut from the feed too?
Well, for sure they would take a cut
apps,
from that.
Right?
Yeah,
what do they get for apps? 30%, right?
Yeah. It's very interesting. I don't know.
Which is a pain in the ass if you want to rent a movie on Amazon, but then you have to actually go to the Amazon website, type in the whole thing, be like, can I rent this? And then you go back to Apple TV.
The reason why it's compelling, though, is because they already have, and this is why Spotify doing music first was important, because it got them a huge user base that they can leverage to do this, right? Because if I'm going to be part of a bundle, you have to make sure that I'm going to make just as much or if not more money than I'm making by myself.
Right.
Which means you got to bring a whole lot of people to the table that I'm going to get.
Which they basically tried with Apple News, right?
Right. And it
I
hasn't
don't know
really
if it's worked or not.
No, it hasn't worked at all. And I think a part of it was papers like the New York Times didn't join because it was, why would I want to share?
I actually like Apple News. It has a lot of magazines. It's got the LA Times. It's got
great
a whole
for
bunch
end
of
users. And this is always Apple's problems in these spaces. It's great for end users, but the actual publishers get screwed. It's like the App Store. Like it's great for end users. You can buy once and get updates forever. Really sucks to be for a developer. And so I think you've actually seen there should have been much more innovation as far as apps on the phone, and I think there hasn't.
Maybe
been.
That's coming though.
No, I think
could be
Apple,
one of our innovations.
Maybe
for 2020.
That would require Apple to sort of become much more developer friendly. That in a way that they've just never really shown that they want to be. So,
all right. So the Stratechery.
There you go. 2 for 2.
I did it 2 for 2 newsletter. You can just go to stratechery.com.
There's free posts. So you can
Ben Thompson. The posts are great. They've been. I don't remember when I first became a subscriber, but it was only because you just signed me up. Well, you were like, I think you'll like this.
I have to say that I'm super happy for you. It's so cool that you did this sell. I'm a little bit bummed because I wrote the post. I think this is when you signed up. I wrote a post when Grantland closed.
Yeah,
saying like, actually, the way the business model should be is you should use text to build an audience and monetize via podcast. You need to be a holistic media company.
But that's what I was telling them at the time.
That's right. And so we were 2 peas in a pod on that. And then you built it with the ringer and it was successful. So I could point to, this is super successful. Like I talked about this 5 years ago and now it's no longer an independent entity. But I think what Spotify was willing to put into it demonstrates that it was right. So
I appreciate that. Thank you for all the support. I've enjoyed reading you over the years. Always nice to. I don't know if we've done one in person. Have we? The
first one we did in person.
Did we?
And the second one was on the phone.
So it's our third one.
Third one. Yeah.
The trilogy. There we go.
Because I had the second one on the phone. I had the epic Jason Kidd rant.
Oh,
and then he got fired a month later.
Well, I didn't want to talk about the Bucks because I think it's always been bad luck talking about the Bucks. But man, 70 wins is in play. It's not inconceivable because they can actually win when Giannis doesn't play. Which
Middleton is unbelievable this year.
He's been really good. 28 minutes a game.
I think that Budenholzer didn't know how to use him last year. There was a clash.
Oh yeah,
where Middleton wanted to play in the mid post more, and Budenholzer was like, "No, we're shooting threes." And that, like, Middleton's a great 3-point shooter, but that's not his game, right? This year, he's operating out of the mid post much more. He's operating the pick and roll much more.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually up significantly more. And he's killer in the pick and roll because he's so tall. He comes off, and it doesn't matter for guys because he's 6'9". And so guys in his grill, he just rises up and shoots over him. It's like...
What time are the games on in Taiwan?